Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see a link down below to officehours.global, and there you can sign up to become part of our little crew, or you can see other things that we've shown in the past. It's a good little place to figure out what's actually going on here. If you're here and you've made it into Makana, make sure to ask questions and make sure to vote on those questions. This show is here for you. We answer your questions. That's all we do. We just sit here. We don't have a plan. It's just like, what are they going to ask? And so ask the questions and vote on those questions to move them up. People are getting pretty good at voting now, and we spend a little bit more time at the top of the hour than the bottom of the hour. Bottom of the hour is, the first hour is a general discussion about what you ask about. So general, anything around media or virtual production. Second hour is usually something we want to spend a little more time on. And so today we've got Donald Boone. He's here from Boxed Up, and they put together remote kits and rent them out. And so he's going to talk about the process of remote kits, what works and what doesn't work from his perspective, what it takes to actually get that done. So Donald will be here in the second hour. Really excited to have him. Tomorrow, Terry's back, and she's going to be talking about LumaFusion. So Terry from LumaTouch will be back, and she's going to talk about that. We've had her on before, and she's going to be back talking about multi-camera editing on your iPad, which is pretty slick. So make sure to come for that Q&A. Saturday, of course, we have the education hour, or a couple hours actually. So that's going to start at 8 again. We were going at 9. We're going to move it back up to 8 so that we can make room for some other stuff later in the month, in August. So that's what we got going on. All right, Courtney, what do we have? What's the first question?
Concert. All right. From Vienna in Australia. Vienna is the person's name. Australia is the location. What's the most impressive MacGyver the panelists have ever done during a job, and what problem did it solve?
Anyone have a MacGyver? Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I have one that I don't recommend doing, but this is many, many years ago. I had to run an audio line from one side of the ballroom to another or whatever, and we did not have the time or the resources to fly it or tape it across doorways or, all the other things that you need to do. And yes, Alex, this was a very long analog audio line. So we actually, the hotel had a patch bay and XLR drops all over the ballroom. So I got a couple of XLR barrels and I patched into one end of the ballroom, and then I went and I found their patch bay and I cross-patched with a barrel to the other jack on the other side of the ballroom. And I put a label on and said, please don't pull this out. So there was a lot of room for error, but it got me through this weird audio problem.
That's great. Grant?
Well, fans of MacGyver would know that there was those boring low-budget episodes that happened where he did a community service. It was like he went and worked at the day center or something. And so my example of that in an event was that we had this a concurrent session in a big, actually the Sydney Convention Centre, a huge one. We had 30 breakout rooms, and one of these concurrent rooms was overflowing dramatically. And so there was just people hanging out. There was no way it was going to fit. And we had just moved out of one of the main plenary rooms. The in-house techs had closed it down. They'd walked out. And I'm standing there going, we could seriously just move this session into there. And so all the techs are gone. I run in. My MacGyver was doing all of the tech for the whole room. I got the lights back up, got the projector going, got the sound turned on, got everything happening within about 30 seconds. And then we had all these people rushed in. We started the session. There was about 400 people in the room. And these techs walked back in. They're like, who turned all this back on? It's like, that's me. That's me, MacGyver.
That's good. Go ahead, Jeffrey, and then Sky.
So I do a lot of enterprise live streaming, and what we do is we go to locations, set up our gear, and then we do interviews and things like that. And sometimes they like to go from the server rooms, which of course in a server room it is super loud environment. So we've done a lot of different things, from setting up tables vertically to setting up shelves, and then finding just a ton of boxes, and then bringing those in to kind of kill any of the external sound but still have these racks sitting in the background so people can see what's going on. So sometimes it's a challenge, and sometimes we have a pretty good sounding stage right there with all the extra stuff out there, and it's looking good too.
Go ahead, Sky.
I guess doing things that never had a budget, I guess I was always fortunate to have an imagination to try to solve the problem. And so my whole life has felt like a MacGyver. So I don't know the difference sometimes.
Good,
but
Carl.
most recently,
Oh,
it was putting the photo poles up in the ceiling of Matt in the kitchen as a grid for the lights. And you just don't put a lot of weight up there, but they worked great. They're flexible. You didn't have to poke a lot of holes in the ceiling. But again, using your imagination is kind of my go-to because I never had a budget.
Go ahead, Carl.
So there was a particular photo shoot. I was doing an outdoor garden photo shoot at night where I was doing actually set portraits with a humongous 7-foot umbrella with a studio strobe. But I gave my main camera away to my second shooter because I needed it. So I used their camera, which only had a poppy-uppy flash. So I had to trigger the poppy-uppy flash, which triggered another strobe, but it was essentially just a normal flash that would go on top of the camera, but it was actually away from me. So it was on the other side of me. It could trigger that one. Then that one would blast light into the other one that was behind me, which was the big strobe of the umbrella. So I was flashing from the camera from the little poppy-uppy flash into another flash, which was an on-camera flash, which was then bouncing back to the main studio flash, and they're all on optical triggers, and that worked. And it worked all night perfectly. So, but I don't suggest it.
Go ahead, Courtney.
I was on a McDonald's commercial back in the 80s, and it was a motion control shot, a special effects shot that they did on the Ronald McDonald shoots. And the problem was the motion control camera had a built-in video assist, but it was a non-standard video. And they wanted to line up the motion control move with another move, and there was no way to superimpose it over the existing live image versus the playback of it. And there was no such thing as digital frame synchronizers at the time. So I had a teleprompter. I went and grabbed one of my teleprompters and put it in front of the main monitor with a second monitor down below with a beam splitter on it, and lined up the two images perfectly with a grid so that we could use it to align the motion control to the live image for playback without mixing the two video signals together physically.
We had a client who really wanted to stream to Periscope, and big client. And Periscope you can't stream to. You can't do an RTMP stream. And I've talked about this a little bit in the past, but it definitely felt like a MacGyver when we did it. We were like, well, how do we do it? You can't stream to it. So we took a monitor and we built a grid that had the phone basically point at the monitor. And there's a lot of like figuring out just the right angle and just the right thing so we wouldn't see any kind of moire and what's the distance and everything else. It turned out to be quite a little project to make this work well. Then we tented it all. So you have a phone that's just looking at a TV, and now it's not breaking any TOS, and we still occasionally still use that today. This was done years ago, whenever Periscope came out, because it was like a month after it came out. But it's the best way. It's still the best way to get something into because what you do is you set it all up, and it's got an SDI, into the monitor, and you have a phone just pointed at it, and it works. And you can have graphics, and if you tape everything off so you know where the graphics are supposed to be and everything else, you can have a full production into that. I think that's probably the one that feels the most like MacGyver. I had another one that was just, we had a CEO walking across campus, and as he was walking across, this is for a really big company, and as he's walking across, he said, they sent us an email that had a script, and I was like, yeah, what are we gonna do with the script? And they're like, oh, he wants it on the teleprompter. We didn't have a teleprompter. Oh, we had a teleprompter. We had a teleprompter set up, but it wasn't set up for teleprompting. It was set up so you could see the other side that he was gonna talk into. And so I literally pulled we had like a little TV studio sitting, it's kind of like a little extra little switcher. And I grabbed onto it and just started rewiring but he's like, I had like 5 minutes. And so while Teleprompter Plus was downloading on the Mac, I was like rewiring the entire thing. And there was my DP, who's a really good DP, he just kept on going, do a good job, like from Armageddon, because that's what it felt like. I was just going, do a good job, And I was just sitting there because I could only do it once. There was no testing. And so we got it in, I turned on, I put the script in, ran it up, and then he walked into the room and it worked. But I was like, I wasn't sure if it would, but because we didn't get to like test it. So it was a close one. And I definitely did not do the teleprompting as good as Courtney, but it worked. Like I survived it. So everyone should be usable. Everyone should be operational with teleprompting, but also know that there's professionals that do it way better than you do. Next question.
All right. From Leo Mendel in Penner, UK, Kenn Jordan has found an alternative version of the Blackmagic homepage with the new products. Wow. Can we discuss?
What?
Yeah.
What's going on, Ken?
Well, I actually didn't want to show this until because they're constantly changing the page, but as Leo brought it up, let me just full screen this. And DaVinci Resolve 18 with spatial audio.
Exciting.
And A10 Mini SDI 4K. And you see it's got 8 SDI inputs. There's also the Blackmagic Web Presenter HDR 10-bit encoder. Then the 8K Pocket Cinema 4K. But the real news is this: the partnership with Office Hours Global.
I think. Did you add the partnership?
You evil genius!
I know. He's got us all set up. So did you make up the whole page?
Yeah, it's quite
the match is really good. The match is like it's all the things we wanted.
So anything else you wanted, I can just let me know, and you can, and they will release it.
If you build it, they will come.
So, hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah.
Hook, line, and sinker. You had me
The
totally.
design is so perfect. It like matched it perfectly. I was like, really? Did they leave this up here? Like until you got to the office hours thing, I was like, holy smokes! And then so yeah, it's
Alex was going to remove the limits on his credit cards right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I was definitely like, oh, this is going to be an expensive week. So anyway, it may still be. We'll see at 10. All right, next question.
All right, from Tobias Moss in Minneapolis. Office Hours Global. What tech in existence are coming out? Sorry, it just moved on me. What tech in existence are coming our way would enable non-English speakers to be a bigger part of the standard office hours group?
Yeah, go ahead, Richard. Oh, no, there's definitely some live translation of, there's definitely live translation that's coming. The technology is coming towards us. It's just not easily accessible yet, but I'm pretty certain that we're going to see more and more of that inside of Zoom. Everyone's talked about it. This is like the holy grail, is people being able to talk into it Star Trek style, where you can talk into it and have audio come out the other side in the language that you're in. And I can't say a lot more than that, but a lot of companies are working on it. So go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, the sort of forerunner in that in terms of what's publicly available and is being worked on a lot is Microsoft Azure. And Microsoft Research have been doing work on this for about 30 years. Yeah. So their translation team is amazing.
They have a Bing translation or whatever that has worked in the business part of Skype for years, and it's super accurate. And if you look at like Google Hangouts or Meet,
it only works on Western languages. Unfortunately, it doesn't really work for like Arabic or Chinese. Well, Chinese it kind of works on, but
currently. But I mean, you can see it coming. Like, and then all they have to do when they have that is just go text to speech, which we already know how to do. So a lot of this stuff is very, very close to the surface. Go ahead, Grant.
Wow.
Did I say it correctly?
First time you've said, oh,
Grant.
It just sounds weird coming from you. But thank you for trying. I have
for trying. I didn't actually hit it. It's just like it's more in the right direction.
Grant.
Yeah,
Grant. It's very quick. It's the Grant. Mm-hmm. So the live or the translation that you can do in Zoom is not it's not too bad, as in like using an interpreter. And so people choose. You have an interpreter that chooses that channel, and you have anyone that wants to can choose that language, and then you're sort of hearing the main room at a lower level, and it's kind of ducking in the background, and then you're hearing the interpreter, and everyone can sort of talk over it, and that works okay. And then the subtitles, the live captioning that is in Zoom now does do translation, and so I was just on a meeting with people speaking in Mandarin, and it was coming out for me in English, and so that does work. And then also every now and again, I just want to be able to say, I can't talk too much about this. And I'll just throw it in there like Alex does. Just say, I can't talk too much. And then you'll be like, what does he know? What does he know? I don't know anything. I just say it every now and again.
I should do that more often. Anyway, I think it would ruin it if I used it too often. Go ahead, Leo.
So bringing the question back to the fact he was talking about the Office Hours Global and the Office Hours Group, when we look at what we do in after hours, we're a bit slower. So we do actually follow the chat much closer and enable, because I'm also quite conscious that there are some people who don't want to talk on audio, and we want to bring them into the conversation, and they have some really valid points. And it is taking a bit of training, and exactly in now it's like I will have Mukana open on the other side, and I will watch some of the comments in Mukana, and if I see something that I see somebody's put in there that I can bring to the show, I will bring it in, because I think it is quite a valuable way of doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next question.
From Rupert McRae here on the panel in Dallas, Texas. If streaming a parade with multiple but mainly fixed cameras, how best to keep an even audio on a band as they move along the length? Would a single wireless boom op in the parade do the trick?
Yeah, go ahead, Carl.
So this is something we see with Anzac Day, which is our day where we see marching bands broadcast live on television. And you're right, they just have a fixed mic, and the band gets louder and then they get quieter. The only suggestion, if you have to have a fixed mic, is point it down the parade. So don't point it 90 degrees, have it like as at 100, 0 degrees or 180 degrees as you can to the parade direction. Usually pointing out the parade, so that way essentially they will get louder as they get closer. But if you've got like a shotgun, like a 416 or something, pointing essentially the same or 180 degrees, you get the least change. But when they go past that mic, they'll disappear pretty much straight away, which is kind of a good thing. So the band comes, they come, and if your camera is a similar place, they'll be there. And then once they've gone past the mic, they'll disappear. And the next band behind them, which maybe 250 meters, 200, maybe 500 feet, they will start to be picked up. It's not ideal, as if someone was following the band, of course, but then you've got to choose when you're going to cut from that band to the next band anyway. So this is kind of natural way of cutting, as if you were there on the sidelines.
Go ahead, Stuart, and then Chris, and then we'll move on.
Just the way I'm reading the question comes up with a different answer, because it sounds like Rupert wants to keep the audio on one band, or as there's only one band marching. To which point I ask, how far is the parade, and will a wireless lapel mic on the back of the suit of the band leader do the job for you?
Go ahead, Chris.
Yesterday in office hours, we heard a fascinating story. I can't remember the gentleman's name. Carl may remember, of a guy who was tasked with solving the problem of Formula One cars on a long straightaway coming straight at the camera. And similar to a parade, I guess, moving sound. He sampled all the various engines in the race, and he played them through an EMU emulator.
Right.
He just played them live. Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Carl. And the fascinating thing about this is he did it in the late 80s, I believe.
Right.
It was a long time ago.
That's hilarious.
And so when what's coming? It's a Ferrari. Okay. And he would play live on television.
That's funny.
Fascinating.
One temptation to think a little outside the box there is that parades don't move very fast. You could probably, if you let people know that you were doing it, you could probably take a wireless mic setup and like have 3 of them and just walk up to the one behind the, like if you're at a main thing and just set it on their thing and then grab it as soon as they get out of camera, just set it on their float and have it just be a mic, a little area mic that is, it may not be great, but it'll be better than it trying to figure out it going up and down, is have like a little box that has the mic, that has the wireless in it, that has, whatever. And you just set it down. And then you'd have, if you had 3 of them, you'd have the one that's going through, the one that just went past, the one, like you'd have 3 or 4 of them and just set them on the thing. And you would just, if it's a marching band, it might be a little bit more complicated. Go ahead, Rupert.
Yeah, Stuart was on to my point. I have the ability in this kind of use case to put somebody or a vehicle in the parade. So I could be in front of them, behind them, going at the same pace. And
is it only one band that you're trying to handle?
Yeah, yes, yeah. And
okay.
And we're talking about the area of interest is 2, maybe 3 blocks.
Oh, got it. Yeah. Then that would be much more doable. I was trying to think of how to do all of them. So go ahead, Sky.
Archivally, you could probably look at the Rose Parade on YouTube, and there'll probably be some wide shots, and you'll be able to see.
There's wide shots, but most of the audio isn't very good. I mean, they're talking over it. I mean, it's like kind of there, but you don't really. I mean, that audio is not a priority in the Rose Bowl. I mean, in any of those parades, they just look at the big shiny things. Next question.
A lot of flowers.
Yeah.
From Aaron Husledge in Durham, North Carolina. How are people feeling about the after hours show?
We've now moved to after hours. I came in at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon and there was like 35 people. I was like, okay, well, there we go. And I kind of interrupted. I had to do a test to solve an argument. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, it's great. It's even when it's silent, and just knowing that it's kind of that they're there in the background while you're working away. It's it's good company.
I really think that what we've stumbled onto is a virtual open office that you actually have the control you want in an open office. Like that you have that creative, I can go and ask that when the person's window is on, it says, I'm here and I'm available, right? When you turn it off, you're not there available anymore. You can just listen to it, listen to the conversations going by. You can ask questions. So it has all the power of an open office without all the inconvenience of an open office. Go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed spending a lot of time in there. I haven't been able to make this show every day, but it's nice to check in and see how the show was and hang out with people and see what happens. And I think the moments of serendipity are really great. So I really appreciate that evolution of what we're doing. I think it's really strengthening the community quite a bit. And if you're not in the after hours, but come hang out with us. Yeah, no pressure, just sit and chill.
It's fun. Well, and I get up now. When I get up at 5, I jumped in and I was just amazed at how usually there's like 1 or 2 people that start coming in, and then there's 10 or 12. Now there's like 50, at 5 o'clock in the morning, all sitting around. Sky.
I think Carmi's the unsung lighthouse keeper, because he seems to be the keeping the light going, keeping the light on for us.
Yeah,
but he's been our hero.
Yeah, go ahead, Leo.
I sat there and thought about would there be a better technology for it. You can sit there and say, should we be putting it onto something else? But I think the nice thing about it is a single-threaded conversation. Normally, you want to walk away from things which are single-threaded conversation because you want to have multiple conversations, but it's not that. That isn't what it's about. So it does actually slow it down. Sometimes it goes too slow, you could argue, or it gets too stuck on a conversation, but that's life. That's how things work. But it is not this show. It's very not this show, and it isn't going to be that. So, and I think that's where it really works really well. Yeah. But we don't want to praise Carmi anymore. He doesn't need any praise.
Good guy.
Yeah, yesterday was pretty fascinating. I was loosely listening, so I missed the beginning of it, but somehow they got into a conversation about the oldest camera, I believe it was. And so Carl brought out this amazing camera, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. And then a gentleman from Brazil, Carlos. We had never seen him on the show before. Longtime listener, first time caller, I guess you'd say. He brought out this wind up camera, and then he had a gold record behind him. And it was just fascinating that he's like, I've been listening to you guys since September. I was like, wow, we've got amazing people that are listening to the show. They're just coming out of the woodworks. And then he went on for a while, and it was just an amazing person to see and hear and know that they're out there, so.
I have a feeling that it's going to become my, like what used to be NPR, like you'd have like playing in the background or some news or TV or whatever. I'm kind of figuring out where I'm going to put it on my desk of just having an iPad, or it's probably just sitting there in it, that's kind of on, and I turn it on, and if I have to think or be in a call, I turn it off. I hopefully remember to turn it off anyway. And then, but that I can just kind of, I just feel like listening to something for a little while I'm having lunch, or while I'm thinking about something, or I have a little moment, or just while I'm working on something that doesn't require as much brain power. It just seems like, and then jump in. That's the thing that I've been not doing that right now, because I have a lot of things I have to think about. And every time I get into the pre-show, the biggest problem I have is that I get caught up in it. It's hard for me to listen to and not suddenly become like really fascinated by the conversation. So it's a really good one.
We've gotten good at telling people to go away too, if they need to. Like Carl, go to bed, Carl.
All right, next question.
All right, from Rupert McRae here on the panel. How often do you clean your main zoom camera lens?
Go ahead, Stuart.
Task.
I'm going to say as little as possible and as gentle as possible with the softest cloth you can find. And a little lens cleaning fluid, you can get proper paper from them from photographic supplies. But because I'm one of the few, one of the proud, one of the Pentaxians, I'm going to share a video for you in Mukana showing how you can clean a Pentax camera in Afghanistan. And I'll leave that one for you to watch.
Very good. Carl.
So I use a rocket lens blower, which I'm sure most of us all own, and I use a lens cap. I don't think I've touched any of my lens, and also I use a UV filter or clear glass filter on the front. That's another thing. So if I do get a fingerprint on there, I'll actually go spend $20 and just put a new one on there, and that one becomes a crash. It's a high risk piece of glass. But that's if I'm putting on like my 24 to 70. But yeah, so lens cap, a UV or clear glass filter, and a rocket blower. I never touch the lens, physical glass, with anything ever.
Yeah, and it's one of the things when I travel, I almost always have at least the UV lens. Now, Steve Simon, photographer, gave me a hard time about it. He's like, you're spending all that money on the glass, and then you put this cheap filter on the front, and so I got a lot of. And so when I'm taking photos that really matter, I usually will take it off for that moment, and I do clean it. Most of the lenses are pretty. But I blow it off, as Carl said, very carefully, and use a cloth that generally I use once or twice, like before I get rid of it, because I don't want it to pick up any grit and then go across the lens. And so usually it comes out of the plastic, and I use it a couple times, and then it's gone. And so we work in film, and the assistant camera operators are pretty rough with those lenses, and they do pretty well. It's just where you really get into trouble is when you're doing high f-stop. So when your depth of field is really long, you start to see things in your lenses and in your sensor that you wish you didn't have. That's the place that really gets you. Next question.
All right, from Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida. Zoom and VPN. Does a corporate VPN degrade Zoom quality? Should Zoom or on VPN be avoided?
Go ahead, Rupert.
It can kind of depend. I mean, not all VPNs are created equal. If you're using like a software VPN client on a laptop, and that VPN is backhauling all of your internet traffic through a corporate network, and you're on Wi-Fi or something like that, then that could get a little messy. If your corporation has provided you with a hardware router that's connecting to their corporate network via VPN, and it's backhauling all your traffic, and their network is stable, then it may increase a little bit of latency, but it will be negligible and hopefully unnoticeable. But if you're in the software client on your laptop world, then that could just get a bit jumpy.
Yeah, I would only use it if I had hardware. And I use it often. I mean, oftentimes I'm on here with, in fact, I'm on here right now, I think, with VPN. So, but I'm using a Meraki hardware appliance that is tied back to the office, and it seems pretty stable to me. Next question. Sorry, I was going to ask it. Go ahead.
From Eric Price. Go ahead if you want to.
No.
From Eric.
You can always tell if next question is me throwing it. Next question is me thinking that I'm going to read it. So I'm going back to Sunday mode. Anyway, go ahead, Courtney.
From Eric Price in Leavenworth, Kansas. What teleprompter software and hardware do the panelists use? Is the iOS Prompt Smart app consistently reliable enough for a one-person studio?
Go ahead, Aaron. I can't hear you, Aaron. There's a button there somewhere.
Okay, I found it. Sorry.
Yeah.
It got buried. Okay. I use the Glide Gear TMP 100, the Lilliput A11 monitor, and then if I use it for teleprompting, I use Teleprompt Plus for the Mac. And there's an iOS version too. Fabulous pieces of software and hardware.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
For any iOS app that I use for teleprompting, I always have the Bluetooth. I have IK Multimedia Blueboard, which allows me to
You're cutting out again, Jeffrey. You're too far away from the mic.
Stop and start the teleprompter. I'll check it. Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead, Courtney.
For a one-person setup, you can probably get away with an iOS app. I avoid iOS and iPad apps because of the fact that they don't really have a file system that you can access easily, and it's difficult to edit on them, etc. We use Telescript software professionally, which is professional software. It's going to cost you, about $1,200 to $2,000, depending on which version you're getting, just for the software. And we built our own, of course, teleprompter hardware. But for one person, if you're the person controlling the scrolling text and you're using it for actual teleprompting, you can get away with it, as long as you're not doing not jumping around, repeating stuff, and needing a lot of the bells and whistles that may not happen on some of that cheaper software.
For teleprompting, I typically am using the ICANN 12-inch is the one because it travels well in our kits. So that's the one we send out. The prompter people 24 is what I use when I'm dual purpose, and it's going to be further away, and I may use it for Interrotron or teleprompting. But we basically in the software pull the text really close into the center, so we don't use the whole screen. So we're basically using the equivalent of a 15 or 12-inch screen when we do that. The software that I use is Teleprompt Plus, but I don't use teleprompting myself ever. And Leo taught me not to do that. So anyway, Leo hates teleprompters and taught me not to just figure it out. And if I really need to be word for word, I memorize it. But when we use teleprompters, which we do often in production, we always hire someone to do it. So I don't know it's a different software. The software is a person who can edit on the fly and actually knows how to use the software at a professional level. So so that's how we kind of approach that. Next question. And I keep on meaning to test the iOS Prompt Smart. What it does for those listening is that it's got a little bit of voice recognition. And if you're saying it's actually a pretty easy problem. If you're saying the thing that's on the text, it's not that hard to figure out where you are on the text. So for a single shooter, a predator that needs to do what they're doing, it's not a bad setup. A predator, by the way, is a producer editor. So when someone is sending someone out as a predator, it means they're going to be all on their own and they're going to produce the whole package and come back with it. Go ahead, Courtney.
I might point out that voice-activated prompters, suddenly I'm out of focus, are a going thing now, but the problem is if you're doing something like a commercial where you'll have 5 different versions of the commercial that are pretty much worded the same but different legal differences, you can't use them for that because it won't know which commercial you're on.
If you're doing your own thing and you need something you don't have anyone to run it, it's easier than doing it by hand. If you're going to do it in a professional environment, it's not going to be enough. But if you're doing your own thing, it could handle a lot of those things for announcements and so on and so forth. Next question
from Jonas Dottel in Ruttlingen, Germany. Can someone explain the math behind LUFS? How do you calculate them?
I don't know if I can explain the math exactly. That would be a Tuesday question, a Tuesday question for LUFS, because we've even stumped Carl. If we've stumped Carl, you could come back and ask.
It's a long answer.
Yeah. All right, next question.
From Jeremy Bowen in Portland. Has anyone used NVIDIA's broadcast noise suppression? Requires the RTX graphics card. It's a real-time noise suppressor.
Leland came on when it first came out and tested it, and it sounded pretty good. I mean, I don't actually think it sounds as good as Noise Assist or Cedar, but I thought that it did some of the work. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
It's good if you have a system that, or somebody that has a system that has the RTX and they don't have that extra stuff.
Yep.
Other than that, I don't normally use it. No.
I found it a little bit mechanical. Like it just didn't sound like it didn't sound as good again as the ones that we're using. Go ahead, Stuart.
I'll ask a silly question. Can anyone actually get an RTX card at the moment? The GPU shortage is everywhere.
I know people who have them. so they're, they're great. But it took a lot of string pulling to get them. Go ahead, Jeremy.
I bought 3 RTX cards in the last month, but I paid a substantial premium over the retail price for them. I'm using RTX noise suppression now. I'm just trying to get a feel for how it compares with the noise suppression in the MixPre 3 before I bite it and spend the, $300 for the plugin.
Go ahead, Aaron.
I think the key thing to remember about any noise assist is the more consistent the noise, the better it works. And if you have a lot of extra peaks and valleys, you will have less good in general. Like some algorithms are better than others. But.
Yeah. Jeremy, it'd be interesting to hear. I mean, I don't know how we do that, but it'd be really good to hear, since you have it, doing a head-to-head would be great. We just have to figure out how to get you a
certainly turn it off and you can hear the room.
Well, but I mean, what we need to do is head-to-head with the other ones. Like here is the same mic, split it out, send it to all of them, and then we switch between them. And so let's think about that. Let's think maybe we can do a test and get you some. See if we can get you some gear. Next question.
From Brian Kaiser in Sterling, Colorado. I'd like to tinker with a 16mm movie camera I have. Where should I buy film, get it developed, etc.?
Go ahead, Carl.
So again, I'm jealous of the United States. So Pro 8mm, they've been around for a long time. They've changed their names, but they've been around since the 70s. So the price I'm showing here, so they have 2 films here. One is Bright Sun, which is for 50. This is Kodak. They just rebranded it. So this is a Kodak stock. And Low Light, which I believe is maybe the 500 from memory. That price of $106, it includes the film. It includes a paid return envelope. It includes processing. It includes scanning. It includes them sending the film back to you. And it also includes them sending you the digital file. That is quite amazing for $106.
And they have 16mm as well?
What I'm showing here is a 16mm. I'm only showing you a very small selection. They're known as Pro 8 because they used to take 16mm and splice it. So they used to buy unsprocketed 16mm film from Kodak, splice it down the middle, and then sprocket it themselves for 8mm. Now they've got such a massive business, they're actually doing 16mm now. So you can see on the side of the can it says Pro 16. This is Kodak film. So this is I am so jealous of this because if we had this in Australia, I'd be using it every day. But this is amazing. Go on their website, take a look at everything they offer. They offer a lot of stuff, but this would be the $106 for a lot of fun, I tell you, and that pays for everything. So you get a digital file and the film back when it's all over.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, I've used Spectra film and video before. They've been around, again, 100 years and are really good. They're more expensive, but they have the same sorts of packages.
That is amazing. I think I mentioned I talked to somebody who just did a 16mm film. I don't think they'll do it again. It's heavy, but what this does is takes that out where you're actually getting the feel of the 16mm, but it's immediately back in a digital format that you don't have to figure out. It's cool. Now it makes me want to go out and get a 16mm camera. Like I need to do one more thing with another camera.
I've got a Rolly one you can have. I'll send it to you.
Okay, great. Next question.
From David Brady in New York. I've just received an email from Kiloview about their Kiloview Intercom Server. Is this a contender against Unity, and should it be looked into?
Go ahead, Guy.
Sorry, I had to jump over to another computer, pull up the email. So basically, this is that message, and it looks like it's a 10 terminal. So it's not like Unity where you're going to have way more than 10, but it is writing over the LAN or the WAN, and you can install it in the cloud. You just download the firmware, but the big thing is that it's their hardware and that you can use the infrastructure that you already have if you're using the Kiloview. So it rides over your existing stuff. But it looks,
so it's more of a
very
service
interesting
if
and
you
it's
already
free.
have Kiloview as opposed to a kind of a generalized service.
Well, and it's free. I mean, that's the crazy thing is that they're saying right here. Let me jump over to that other screen again. But it's free. Here's the downloads. I'll put the link in the chat. You guys can download
but you would
it and take a look at it.
you would assume that you had the Kiloview already. It's free for Kiloview users.
Well, this beta version says anybody can download it, and it's free. Yeah, just like their multi-viewer, which is awesome. If you guys haven't downloaded their NDI multi-viewer, it is slick. So they got some interesting stuff, and their encoders rock.
Interesting model. Next question.
From Tommy Shantz in St. Paul, Minnesota. What is the easiest way to get a keynote into a Windows machine for streaming? Do you need to pull it into PowerPoint? He asks.
Go ahead, Grant.
It's good to have a Mac that you can just play it. But to do the conversion, there's a couple of different ways. You can do an export from Keynote to PowerPoint from Keynote, and that does work pretty well. But I have had a few times where it can be a little funky and some of the animations go weird and things like that. So the other thing you can do is an image build sequence. So you could export all the sequence of images, including all the builds, and then you could import that as kind of like an image, like a photo gallery in PowerPoint very quickly on the PC. That'd be a good way.
You can also export it as a movie, and then if you've lots of animations, not just builds but animations, you can export the movie and then cut it up and then put it in and just play them back. But PowerPoint will never look like Keynote. It has to do with the anti-aliasing and the kerning and the spacing is all different, and it's substandard. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, you can export it and embed it in a web page, and it works just like Keynote. Press forward, back, keeps all the Keynote animations and stuff. That's what I do.
Go ahead, Rupert.
The reason you're using Windows is because that's your streaming platform, but you do actually have access to a Mac. You could just pipe it somehow into the Windows machine and capture it and stream it out that way.
Yeah, go ahead, Carl.
The nice people at CWTM have already solved this problem. So spark up Chrome, log into iCloud. You have a native version of Keynote in iCloud. So the only thing is it's going to be the Google fonts, because it's going to be the Chrome fonts. So I suggest when you create it, make sure you know what it looks like in Chrome. That's the only thing it may not support in some of the Apple fonts, but everything else, the animations, the movies, everything else will be supported.
There you go. Next question.
From Alan Snyder in Cedar Rapids. When painting the walls of our video studio, is there any bad colors for the walls? What colors are suggested to use or not use?
Go ahead, Carl.
Avoid Vanta Black, because it'll make lighting nearly impossible.
We were talking about yesterday. I really want to get Vanta Black suits that people can wear. They're just like these weird things of black that wander around. Go ahead, Courtney.
White is always good because you can paint it with colored lights to make it any color you want, or of course 18% gray, which would be Alex's favorite. But not a bright color, and avoid green screen unless you're always going to be doing green screen in that studio.
Yeah, any color that you put in is going to spill onto everything. So you just have to decide what you want it to spill. Some people make them black so that they don't spill anything. Some people I make all of mine gray so that there's just, and 18% gray, the reason I use it is because I can get a card and I can hand it to a painter and just say, match the card. Like I don't have to figure it out. I don't have to give them anything. I just hand them the card and say, I just want to look like that. And so almost all my offices for the last 20 years have been 18% gray. So that tends to be what we paint everything. It's neutral. It doesn't do a lot of one thing or another, but it also doesn't suck all the light out of the space like a black would. It just depends on but if you're using it, then you have to decide, white is often good for infinite white and so on and so forth, but it bounces a lot of light. So you just have to really think about, how much bounce you want. Sometimes that's good because you can just pull the carpet up. If you have a thrown down carpet, you can pull the carpet up and get fill without paying for it. So there's a lot there. Go ahead, Roscoe, and then Sky, and then we'll move on.
And nothing near flesh tones.
Yeah, absolutely, Sky.
And if you're going to be renting this studio to other people, know that you might be painting it many times, and you'll come away with many layers of paint. So that's an option if you're going to be renting it out to other people.
Next question.
From Douglas Carmichael, many foreign broadcasters and cable or IPTV operators carry BBC World News and other BBC channels. Where in the path would frame rate standards conversion be located? Wouldn't you have to convert one feed for each country?
Go ahead, Carl.
So Terranax made their mark back in the day, and they used to cost thousands of dollars before Blackmagic bought them. They would be on the output before it goes out to broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be the last thing they would do before it goes out. So they'll do everything natively and then switch it if they have to.
In the most part, I'm going to answer this real quickly, but for the most part, there is 25 or 30. It's not like a lot of different frame rates. You just have to figure out which one it is. And there's a little bit of other conversion, whether it's CCAM or PAL or, so there are other formats to that process. These are in cards. They're like little cards that do frame resyncs. And they just pass through them, and oftentimes you'll go into a television, a network area, and there might be racks of these, and each rack is able to manage tens of signals if it needs to. So it's not a very difficult math. It doesn't necessarily do it great. Terranax does it better, but I think generally there are these little cards that AJA makes. Everett's is the one that I see the most in a broadcast area, but they'll do all those frame conversions. Next question.
From Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas, and here on the panel. News site protocol.com reports many companies are postponing their return to the office and implementing new COVID restrictions, I guess because of the D variant. Some tourist venues are also reinstating restrictions. Should the digital sector get ready for stepping up another gear?
Yeah, we've talked about this. I mean, there's most likely it's going to stall out. I mean, it doesn't matter now whether there's restrictions or not. People just aren't going to want to go out, and they're not going to want to go out en masse. So large events are probably going to get kneecapped again. And a lot of the vendors or the clients that we're working with, I don't know how many times they can be seesawed before they just move to digital. It also just, a lot of these are going to be in a rush to go to digital again after they had made all these plans and spent all this money into the fall. So it's going to be a hard jerk back and forth. Go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, my day job, I work in health information stuff, and the current projection is October in the U.S. is the height of this fourth wave, which means that we will be seeing higher numbers until the end of the year, at least, and that's just the facts. And I don't know what people do with that, but
I think people. The problem is that, like, I know people who are streaming stuff in the February of 2020. The math was always 2022. Like everything else in between has been wishful thinking. But when you saw the actual experts actually talk about it, all of them were talking about end of 2022. Like, that's when it's all gonna like phase out. There'll just be all this stuff. So we keep on doing the seesawing because people want something different than what it is. But they've known internally, not even secretly, just internally, like not that. Somewhere in 2022 it'll even out, but it's been that way for a long time. Like this isn't a surprise. It's not like we got surprised by this. They all knew what was going to happen. Go ahead, Courtney.
And I saw that CDC prediction for the fourth wave in October, and I wondered whether NAB could pull the plug at the last minute. I don't know if that's even possible, but I assume if this regulations change and they're strict about it, and Arizona's not too strict about regulations, but yeah, they could pull a plug.
Or Nevada, you mean?
Sorry, I just
was they moved NAB to Arizona. It's really hot. If you only had somebody going with a bunch of cameras to cover it, it would be really good for the vendors. So we'll see if we can get that going. Next question.
From Richard Lavery in Belfast, UK. What are the panel's recommendations for great 12G SDI cable brands? What to use and what to stay away from?
Go ahead, Leo.
So I always buy my cables from Canford now. Canford will make the cables if you need them. They make them with the Nutrix twists on there, the rear twists.
And that's Canford
in the UK. So they, the ones I've shown here are the 3G ones, but I buy my cables from them, and then I buy my cables on my ends and I make them. But they also will make them yourself for you. And they've just been really, really good. They manufacture their own cable.
And we're going to just let everybody know we're going to move fast. So almost all of them are going to be quick answers. Go ahead, Carl.
So Canary. So you can buy it as a spool, 1,000 feet, or you can buy them pre-made. Make sure it's on the cable itself. It says 12G SDI. That's important because if 3G one, you could for short lengths, but once you go long lengths, it won't work. So you must make sure on the cable it says 12G SDI.
Next question.
From Brian Becker in Charlottesville, Virginia. Any recommendation on a service that will scan slides or negatives? Google turns up 100 of them. Does anyone have a favorite?
And go ahead, Carl.
So in the US, I'll post these links into Meccano. So Spears, it would be on the US, and then if you're okay sending your stuff international, then it'd be Photo Corner, Scan Corner, which is in India. But I'll put the links for these in Meccano.
I think the one that I've used in the past is Scan Cafe. I believe, and all I know is I sent them out and they all came back. Great. So that was the Scan Cafe, but those are other good ones as well. Next question.
From Douglas Carmichael, a major university talked about booking student DJs and electronic musicians as pregame entertainment. We've talked about briefing talking head talent. How would you brief DJs and live electronic music performers, also live PA artists?
Grant and then Stuart, real quick.
So for entertainment in a large venue like that, it's more like radio. And so it's actually about the music and the entertainment and getting the interaction of the audience.
Yeah, go ahead, Stuart.
Two things. Firstly, your out time is, and give them a fixed time. And secondly, don't play anything that can be pinged by YouTube's copyright AI.
It depends on whether it's live or not, but don't talk too much. Like the biggest problem that DJs have is they talk too much. Like they think that the people actually want to hear them talk, and very rarely do they actually want to hear you say anything. So there is functional things. You need to go here. I DJ'd 400 weddings in my younger years. There's things that you want to tell people, and you want to think about how you're going to say them, and you want to get in and out quickly, and just say what you need to say it comfortably, make everybody, think about how you're going to say it and get it out there, and then move on. And don't make it about yourself. just really, it's about the show and keeping you out of the way. Next question.
From Tobias Moss in Minneapolis, revealing his true colors. The Phish tour started last night. Every show live streamable, $25 per show for HD, $35 for 4K. Does that correlate with the cost difference to produce HD versus 4K? For big acts, what percentage of concert revenue is coming in via the live stream?
Well, Phish has been doing this for a long time. So this is a model that they understand really well. I don't know if they have to do the whole thing in 4K, but the encoders are more expensive, and it's more bandwidth, and it's an added service. And it's another way to say, well, if you really want that, you can have it, but it's going to cost more. And you're basically underwriting the fact that they're probably Phish is probably doing it all in Blackmagic 4K stuff because it's cost effective and it's what they do. But they've been building a streaming model for a decade. They're probably the band to watch, in that area. When they started, it was pretty rough, but they've gotten pretty good at it. And most bands are not making a ton of money with live streaming right now, but some of the ones that have experimented with it have made tens of millions of dollars on a single, a couple nights, as opposed to, and with very little overhead. So it's coming in a big way. Next question.
From Tommy Shantz in St. Paul, what should I be aware of setting up my new Portal TV to Zoom meetings?
Any tricks other than logging in? I think that I found that doing it, once you log into your portal, getting Zoom, you download the app's on it, I think, and you just, I don't remember whether the app was on or I downloaded, but it was easy. And then I just logged in, and from then on, every time I turn it on, it's there. I have to admit, the portal's over here. It's in a box unless I'm doing Zoom calls. So I literally pull it out and put it up there. Rupert, and then Josh, real quick.
Just a reminder to make sure you get the latest version of the app or whatever updates it needs, because the latest version supports the two-way Bluetooth.
Yeah, very good. Next question is from Tony Mobley in Newman, Georgia. He said, "Does it make sense?" I'm sorry, I don't know why I asked that. Go ahead, Courtney.
You were doing great.
Yeah, exactly.
From Tony Mobley in Newman, does it make sense to add an additional Mac Mini as a backup for CWTM trying to be proactive?
I wouldn't worry too much about backups when you're just getting started. I think that if you've got a relatively new set of gear, I'd spend that money somewhere else for now. I wouldn't necessarily worry about the backup. When you get to a point where there's, hundreds or thousands of people watching, you should definitely have backups for everything. When you're getting started, I'd be a little bit more flexible and spend the money on something that's going to be in front of the camera. Next question.
From Douglas Carmichael, if you were coming into a studio located in a rural area for a streaming project, would you accept Starlink as the main internet connection, or would you prefer a terrestrial fiber connection for critical work?
Okay, real quick. Aaron, Rupert, Carl.
Always terrestrial. Starlink's not ready yet.
Yeah, go ahead, Rupert, and then Carl.
I'd accept Starlink if that's all I could get,
Right.
but I'd fight tooth and nail to get fiber.
Yeah, go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, so if Starlink's all you can get, Starlink's about as good as what most of us actually have. It's just going to be dropouts. So can it sustain that goodness?
Right. Next question.
All right, last one this hour from Liberty White. No, there's another one. Following up with Rupert's question on the COVID-D variant, how will that impact NAB and office hours plans for NAB?
We just have to watch what happens. So I don't know what we're gonna, I think if NAB goes forward, I think that it's only a better situation for what we're doing. There's less people that we have to wade through to shoot video, and we provide a better service for both us and a lot of other people. If NAB cancels, then obviously what we probably do is reach out to all the vendors and offer an opportunity for them to come on here and just do, we'll do NAB during the week of NAB, whether NAB does it or not. so there's, so that, and we'll just reproduce what we were going to do, but we'll just go from vendor to vendor to vendor all over the world. So we'll do it one way or the other. Next question.
From Robert Shoji, any recommendations for a sub $100 in-ear monitor that will be mainly used for Zoom meeting?
Go ahead, Carl, and then Rupert.
So the Behringer 251, just Google that. So that's going to be, and you've got different colors and you have 6 different earplugs.
Go ahead, Rupert.
Or just voice for Zoom, you can get the Otto earpiece like this. It's about $40 for $100 budget, you can get a couple extra earpieces and a USB sound card to run it separately.
And it's very comfortable. I mean, the Otto one is a great one. As a kind of a traditional single ear, over the ear, the Otto works fine. Again, another one of those things where the cord can either be straight or you can buy an Otto with coils. The one with coils is just a little piece of hell. Like, just don't do it. And you want for whatever reason, the tan one is louder, and we don't know why. The black ones are not as loud. There's something different in the amp in the back in that construction. We don't know why. Jeremy.
Has anybody been able to find the Behringer set that Carl mentions in the US? I tried to locate it after he suggested it last time, and the only place I could find it was in the UK, and they were like $60 to ship and $60 for the item. So I ended up with these Shure 215s, which seemed to work okay.
Absolutely. Carl?
So Sweetwater is the only official distributor, along with Amazon in the United States. If they haven't arrived at Sweetwater yet, then Anderton's or Thomann in Germany.
And last question for the first hour.
All right, from Joel. Any reviews on the Livestream Studio HD550 or similar hardware?
Go ahead, Grant.
So it's pretty old now. I was just double checking that there isn't a new one, but I used it in the early days, and it's a PC, right? And then it's just that they've added some capture cards and some outputs and things in it. It worked okay, but it had the same sort of problems that you experience with PC software trying to do a bunch of things. It tends to fall over after a time. So dedicated hardware is always the best way to go.
Yeah, we've had to do a lot of unexpected things in our experience as well. Go ahead, Aaron, real quick.
Aaron, yeah, no. The 550 is old hardware. If you want to run Livestream Studio, build a new PC and run Livestream Studio on it.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. we're now going to shift gears. I'm really excited to have Donald Boone on. He's joining us, and Donald is the founder of Boxed Up, and Boxed Up basically provides the service that a lot of us, build the kits that you're seeing here, but they build them and make them portable and send them out. And so I thought it'd be really interesting to get his perspective, because he goes through so many kits and so many pieces of how they approach it, how they got here, how they approach it, and what the gotchas are, and answer your questions about it. So a lot of us are building kits and mailing them out, and probably would also be, I met Donald last week, actually, and we started talking, and I was like, well, this is going to be way easier. For us, we build a lot of specialty kits, but I was like, oh, if I can just not have to have so many kits and just know that I can go somewhere and have that handled for the kits that I need. For some of the kits, when I get, especially an overflow, and we may even get out of the business at some point. It's not something that we're super excited about, but having somebody else who specializes in it. So anyway, so I thought it'd be fun to have Donald come on. And Donald, can you tell us a little bit about how did you get into this business in the first place?
Yeah, happy to. Thanks for having me. So it's sort of an interesting story. I'm not a specialist. I'm not an event planner at all. In fact, the last 4 years I spent working at Amazon, right in God's neck of the woods out there in Seattle. So I'm really a tech guy by nature, but and I launched Boxed Up back in 2019. And our entire vision from the start was to really be the Airbnb for stuff. But like a lot of people, when 2020 happened, we were sort of forced to pivot and really figure out exactly what people wanted. And I remember watching YouTube, and I kept watching broadcast television, and just started waiting for people to show up looking better in their home spaces.
We're still waiting. We're still waiting for that to happen. It's like, how hard is it?
Yeah, MSNBC, CNBC, you name it, everyone still looks bad. And I said, well, if they're not going to figure it out, how about I give it a try? So that's exactly what we did. And really, the way our platform works, it's a marketplace. So we either ship kits out from our locations. We fulfill in about 3 locations out of the US. I know there's a ton of international folks. We do ship internationally. It's not perfect. Customs can be a bear. And then if we don't have the equipment, what we'll do is we'll source it from other third parties and local vendors. And that enables us to be really flexible with our inventory. So as an example, we'll kit out a Sony a7 III, a 50 millimeter Rode Wireless Go lavalier mics, a light, and a couple of tripods. It all fits within a box. So we sort of send out a branded box and try to make it as a consumer experience as much as possible. And then we'll ship it directly to the door throughout the US in 2 days or less. But having some inventory in-house allows us to pretty quickly adapt to customers' demands. We can do overnight. But when we have big events, and we've done a few of those, let's say 30 kits plus in circulation, we'll leverage our third-party network. We'll kit it out ourselves, ship it out, or we'll just have trusted third-party suppliers deliver it directly to customers. So I think a good way to think about us, if you really don't want to be in the logistics game, or you do some kits, but you want someone else to fulfill it because it's not necessarily in your warehouse to go to run the UPS and slap labels on boxes, that's sort of what we love to do and what we're happy to do, and sort of have crafted our business around.
Yeah, I think that it's hard to describe. We've been sending out kits for a decade, and it's hard to, there's a lot of logistics. Like, it's not just it's, I'll have a couple kits laying around. They have to be tested. Do you go through a lot? What's the testing procedure when they come back? Like, how do you handle turning them over?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the reasons why we like having our own in-house inventory as well, because we can ensure things like, hey, the product is clean. So it comes back to our locations, we sterilize it, we recharge all of the batteries, and then we go through a process where we kit out everything and sort of prep it for shipment. So sort of with each box, we include just really some sort of basic things that make the unpackaging experience make sense. So a package that says look good. So someone's not guessing like, hey, where do I find my camera accessories? We have a package that says sound good. So we just say, if you look in your box in that black bag, there's a bag that says sound good, and we'll go through that process. The same thing goes for sort of installation instructions. So we'll ship out a QR code that people can scan, and then we'll include that prepaid shipping label. So we'll go through that entire process for each order that goes out and comes back into our location so that the customer experience is pretty standardized.
Yeah, that's great. Let's go ahead and jump into the questions. First question.
Okay, from Rupert McCrae in Dallas. As a renter, do I need to insure the equipment I rent out? As an equipment owner, should I have special insurance on the gear I'm renting out?
It's a great question. We cover insurance and round trip shipping all within the price of our product. So let's talk about the consumer experience. We don't necessarily love traditional rental houses. You'll have to go in with a COI. Sometimes you'll have to put down a full deposit of the product if you want to walk out of the door with it. We say we'll take care of that process. So we actually insure all of the products that go out of our door. Let's say if you're an owner and you're looking to monetize some equipment that you don't use, or you've got a third or fourth camera and you want to rent that out, we'll cover that from your perspective as well. So we insure up to $10,000, and that's lost, damaged, or fully replaceable.
And what kind of losses do you see?
Less than 1%. So what I'll say is the consumers, we've gotten pretty good at the tails of someone who's trying to rip us off. They'll rent a ton of items for a single day and they'll try to get it all in and get it back. So that looks a bit fishy. So we'll ask for a deposit, or we'll ask for identification that matches the address that we're looking to ship to. And they typically kind of run scared, like, all right, this one's a bit too hard to rip off. We'll go somewhere else. And then for B2B, we really don't run into a ton of loss or theft. That channel just has a ton of sort of delays. So for example, we'll ship a kit to Tyra Banks, which we had before. She shipped it back on time, but some people, if you're shipping out 15 kits, without a doubt, someone will have a delayed shipment or delayed return back. So we run into that quite a bit, but not a lot of theft, surprisingly.
Next question.
From Rupert McCrae on the panel here from Dallas, Texas. How is technical support handled for gear rented through BoxedUp?
So we have a couple of models. What we like to do is sort of flex in as sort of a virtual AV team. So what we try to encourage most customers to do is manage setup on their own. So we try to make it as self-service as possible. We'll include a video, picture, instructions with each kit that goes out the door. But that's not everyone, and someone needs, a lot of customers need a white glove treatment. So what we'll do is we'll serve as an extension of their AV team. So we'll get invited to pre-production calls. It typically takes us about 30 minutes to set up a kit. So we'll come and then we'll just bill out at an hourly rate if our support is needed. So just treat us like sort of back of the house virtual AV tech support.
That's great. Next question.
From Douglas Carmichael, could the kit concept be useful not only for bringing guests to events, but also for creating a virtual rental company without a physical storefront?
It's an interesting concept. Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think what I try to encourage people to do is, hey, we don't want to be in the business of owning mountains of equipment, but we think that there's an awesome way for people to get equipment to other places. So we'll meet a lot of individuals who maybe they're running a small business. Silent disco headphones, as an example, is a really good one that came up recently. Like, hey, we have these, we're really not using them, but some cities are, and they're out partying. So we said, hey, just list it, and you can really use BoxedUp as your own rental storefront, and you don't have to worry about the technology and keeping up with developing apps and developing websites. That's really sort of what our expertise is. So we're happy to serve in that capacity, but we don't really see ourselves as sort of long-term owners of mounds of equipment and specialists in those areas.
When an owner rents it to a customer through you, what's the time frame or the pathway for that gear to get to does it go to you first, then you do all the things, and then you send it to the, like, how does that work?
It's a great question. If it's a kit, we try to get that double ship, and we try to get that in our packaging and our unboxing experience to make it make the most sense. So for example, for the 4K kits, it's 4K inside, obviously not streaming. We try to kit up all those together. We may source cameras and lenses from other third parties. We'll still bring them to our location, kit it out. But let's say someone needs an iPad for an event. That's a really recent example. We'll just have that direct ship. Someone wants to use a MiFi device. Okay, you can ship that direct. We don't necessarily need to see those simple to use items that are pretty self-explanatory, but anything that's complex and that's going to take some setup time, we like to bring it to our location first before we ship it out.
Next question.
From Rupert McCrae in Dallas, what is the mix of individuals versus businesses listing their gear for rental with BoxTop?
Great question. Individuals move first. So we've got over 130 individuals listing their products for rent, but we're growing in the business space, and businesses can have a ton of trepidations to say, well, we already have our local business. We don't necessarily sort of need your help. I think what we're finding is we're able to get into the doors of customers. So like NPR is a big customer of ours for multiple reasons. They went How I Built This Summit fully virtual with Guy Raz, and we supported all of their main stage speakers. We had to ship internationally. We shipped across the country. But now that relationship has grown to a point where NPR says, well, can you ship our equipment out? So they send us microphones and we kit that out, and we just manage the supply and the inventory as a service on their behalf. So, you know, what I'll say is, individuals have come first, but I imagine the B2B side or businesses or third parties will begin to come quickly as well, because our reach is extremely well and it's convenient for a lot of the enterprises that like to utilize our services. So if you can only service Atlanta and DC and sort of logistics isn't necessarily in your nature, that's sort of where we like to raise our hands and say we can help.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing that I could see some folks that, you know, as it gets bigger, you could end up with some folks that just buy a little group of stuff that you need, you know, and it's their little rental, again, like the Airbnb model. You know, they're just generating some passive income from gear that's laying around. So,
Exactly.
Next question.
From Aaron Huslage in Durham, North Carolina, how do you deal with excess inventory?
So it depends. We sell a fair amount of inventory. As you can imagine, people get it in their homes. We had an actress have some equipment and say, hey, I really love this. Can I just keep it? And we're happy to say, yep, we'll send you a checkout link for the difference in your rental and the cost to purchase. So we actually have quite a few people that will sell inventory to, and that makes sure that we can also keep things fresh. But you'll be surprised. You know, we'll sit on inventory for, you know, Yeti podcast mics. I hate those things, but people like them because they're simple. So we sat on those for 6 months. That's not a single order. And then overnight, you know, we got an order for 20 plus. So you'd be surprised at how much stuff where we're sort of hesitant to take a massive inventory positions, but people still like to utilize. So it's interesting.
Next question.
From Grant Whitehead in Adelaide, Australia, kind of ties into your last answer. Do you ever sell kits for people to keep?
We do. Just to expand on that a bit, we're actually started partnering with a virtual reality company. I won't name the name now, but their software is embedded in, it's required for you to have an Oculus Quest 2 headset. Not a lot of people have those in their home. So we're partnering with them. They're going to own the equipment and we'll ship it out to customers. But the entire model is to get people to purchase and keep the headset. So we're happy to run those types of transactions and customize kits for customers and try to make not just rental easy, but also purchasing maybe new or sort of fringe items that a lot of customers aren't aware of yet.
Now, if someone is part of the supplier and someone wants to buy their camera, is that something, you have that worked out, or how do you go back to them and say, hey, they actually want to keep the camera?
We haven't turned on that function yet. We want to sort of surface it in the UX where someone's just able to just purchase and check out. So we only sell our sort of 1P or company-owned inventory right now. We don't do a lot of transactions for third-party equipment. It's like, well, we'll ask the owner, but in the meantime, we need you to ship that back to us.
Yeah, very good. We've had ones where people install them, and once they're installed, they don't want to uninstall them. Like they just like, I just want this one. Can I just keep this? And then usually, go ahead, Grant.
Exactly.
So say I had an event where I had 150 executives from all around the world, and I needed to send them a Brio and a kit, but we want them to keep it. Is that something that that you'd be interested? Is that something that you would do?
We would. So that actually came up recently. We talked about sort of excess inventory. We were sitting on a pretty good stock of Logitech Brios, and we really liked LoomCube makes a really cool laptop mic. It's light, it's simple. You just stick it on the back of a computer monitor, and someone just wanted to purchase 30 of them for clients throughout the world, Australia, London, etc. And we said, sure, why not? We've got some in stock that are unused, but that's a part of our model as well. So we definitely can. For those things, we do need some lead time since we don't keep a ton of inventory. 30 days is probably about the amount, and 130 is a ton of kits, but we haven't met a number that we've had to turn away yet. So I'd say definitely.
That's really cool. Next question.
Another question from Grant Whitehead in Adelaide. Do you send USB hubs, USB-A and or USB-C?
Yeah, great question. So standard kit comes with a A7 5-foot HDMI cord, HDMI capture cord, and by default USB to USB-C, because more than half of the individuals that we're helping out will have a Mac. So we'll send that as a standard. If we're going with the Rode Lav, the wireless Go system that we use, we'll also send a USB to USB-C for that as well. So pretty much anything that needs to get put into a computer, we'll send it USB and USB-C for flexibility. In some situations, we need to customize those, but very rarely. For our stock kits, either the Brios or the Sony A7s, those all come with USB to USB-C.
Next question.
From Guy Cochran in Seattle. How often do people fall in love with the kit and just want to pay to keep it?
The 4K ones, I mean, the A7 III one, that's about a $3,100 kit. But I'd say 5% of the time people keep them and just want to hold on to them. People do some funky things. I mean, I've had people rent kits for 2 months. I said, well, you probably just want to buy it. I was like, no, I'll just rent it for 2 months. So we're happy to. I'll say the lower MSRP ones convert at a much higher rate than a $3,000 one, obviously.
Next question. Oh, can't hear you.
From Rupert McCrae in Dallas, Texas. What video contribution and collaboration platforms are your customers asking to be compatible with, like Zoom, WebEx, NDI, etc.?
Great question. We get a lot of Zoom, a lot of StreamYard, some Google Hangouts. I'd say those are probably the top ones. Teams every now and then, hop in. We'll get some homegrown systems. One of the things that can be a hang up for some, if it's a web-based platform that we've seen, Chrome won't automatically pull in the HD video. So they'll have to install a Chrome plugin in order to allow our video to show. Otherwise, the ratios are squished. So whenever that happens, we have to sort of circumvent that. But we do a lot of Zoom and a lot of StreamYard, a lot of hopping.
Next question.
From J.J. McKenna in San Rafael, California. What do you use for remote lighting controls? Are you able to manipulate lighting levels to get better camera shots?
Great question on remote lighting. We'll pre-kit the items and put everything auto. So ISO auto, f-stop auto. We'll send them a kit, a lighting kit. I'll pull it out just to show you. It's not huge. We can't do any remote controls. Alex and I chatted about that. I think that's probably the next step for us. We try to stay away from anything that forces us to have to build software into it, at least for now. But I think it's something that, especially, if the fourth wave or sort of this extends into 2022, like we expect it to, that's something that we can get into. But for now, we just send out a newer panel light. It gets pretty bright, adjusts for whites and yellows. So we don't have to do it a ton. And a lot of the work is done in the camera itself.
Next question.
All right, from Douglas Carmichael. How do you handle customs and carnet issues for international rentals?
Great one. We don't do a ton of international rentals. International purchases, easy. We'll do those, no problem. And we'll pick up the taxes, duties, and fees. The international rentals can get tricky. Customs will typically take about 7 days on the way out. it's getting it back that makes it difficult for us. So I'd say for now, on the rental side, at minimum, the US is sort of our wheelhouse. We'll do international ones by exception, only because sort of getting it on the way out so we can sort of scale up our infrastructure and third parties in some of the countries that we see a lot of demand in. We'll probably hold off on pedal to the metal in some international markets.
I know we even, I mean, we know how to do it, but we still use Rocket when we have to send a kit to somebody, because they'll manage door to door with Carnet. So they'll go, and these are big kits, but they'll literally just handle the whole thing for us and we just get it back. But you need somebody to be at the door to get the kit. So it really increases the cost, because they're going to have to manage the Carnet. You can't put it in something to manage the Carnet process. That's the challenge. Next question.
From JJ McKenna in San Rafael, have you seen a stable VPN solution for managing kits that are tweaked remotely?
Not yet. We don't do a ton. For context, we'll sort of basically ship kits on behalf of event planners, like a lot of this audience, and then we'll back out of the room and let the specialists take over. So we sort of stop once talent sounds good. We'll sort of back out and let folks like you all manage stability and VPN challenges. So I'd look to some of these SMEs on that item.
Next question.
Another question from JJ McKenna in San Rafael. What is your preferred simplified, self-contained build design for a boxed up kit shipped to international locations?
It depends. I wouldn't say there's any one standard that's typical for international. I think UPS does a pretty good job of getting products or shipping products internationally door to door. I wouldn't say sort of the standardized kit or box or anything that you're shipping sort of makes it easy or harder to do. It's really just sort of an expectation that documentation, what you're shipping, designating hazardous, dangerous materials like lithium ion batteries, and making sure you're flagging all of those things that can prevent you from products getting held up at customs.
Next question.
From Tlaloc, Miguel Lopez Waterman in Brainerd, Minnesota. What equipment do you feel should be listed? Is there a limit of what you want to be seen, I guess, on your offerings?
Stay away from recreational drugs, but outside of that, if it can fit in a box, I think we're always surprised at what people will rent. We saw the same thing at Amazon. We'd have sellers that would come on and just say, we're selling, 2x4s in mortar. And we'd say, just list it. And, lo and behold, there's someone out to purchase it. I say the same thing goes for rental. People want stuff, or they want to try stuff that they don't necessarily want to own. So I'd say list away. We do a lot of sort of packaged items, and you don't necessarily need to put it in a boxed up branded box or the original box. But what I'll say is what we do get really excited about is sort of next wave. All right, it can't fit in the box. Can I rent a lawnmower? And, the answer will soon be yes, not today. But we imagine a world where sort of instead of like, I wish I knew that neighbor's telephone number. He's got that rod and lawnmower that I really want to use. We think that there'll be a world where you'll be able to do that on box. Not today, not quite yet. But so if it can fit in a box, list it. Thumbs up.
That's great. Next question.
From Roscoe Jones here on the panel. What gear caused you issues? What products do you no longer carry?
Ooh. I hate to go back to those freaking Blue Yetis. Those are.
Why do you dislike them so much? Well, there's a story there somewhere.
No, we just shipped out some recently, and even the USB adapters that go into the bottom of the microphones, those were broke and faulty. So we don't do any of those. We used to ship out sort of these podcast kits and arms because they look really professional and you can put some really nice things on them. But we sort of shied away from anything that's complex that forces, we're in it so much that we're comfortable with it. But what you forget is for a novice or for someone who's just opening it up, even the part of opening up the box and seeing everything that they've got to put together can be overwhelming for them. So we try to, simple, as minimal boxes as possible, because the more stuff you throw in there, people get overwhelmed. And especially if you've got a tight turn and they're talking in 30 minutes, but they're in the middle of setup. I've seen people get flustered, they'll start sweating, and it'll kind of throw them off their game for their actual talk.
We literally had an executive a couple of days ago open up the box and said, "You need to send someone to set it up."
Yeah,
like they, and it wasn't that complicated. It was one of our simple ones, and it was just like they literally opened it up and just said, "Yeah, you're gonna have to send someone over to set this up. I'm not gonna do it." Go ahead,
Aaron. Just to follow up on one thing you said, do you think the look of the equipment, the quote unquote professionalism of the equipment, matters a lot to these people that are renting these kits?
That's a $1 million question.
Yeah, I just heard you mention it a couple of times, and I was just curious.
Yeah, I'd say it depends. Where we find is there's a segment of the population that is enamored with the look and feel, but there's some people, just to talk about pricing, like our standard kit rents for less than $200, like out of the door round trip, and they'll still like, well, I'm just fine using my laptop. And I'm like, man, that looks really crappy. They just don't care. So I'd say that's a tough one. We found, let's say if you take the Fortune 500, there's some folks that just absolutely love it. They'll use it for all hands. They'll use it for external events. They'll use it for everything. But there are other companies where it's just not in their nature. The one I came from, Amazon, they're not a big customer. They just don't care. They're really cheap. And they just don't value that kind of stuff. So they'll send iPads or they'll use laptop cameras, and we'll say, hey, it looks bad, but if you don't care, there's nothing we can do there. So yeah, I'd say it depends on the category of customer.
Next question.
From JJ McKenna in San Rafael. Daniel, you mentioned that you were just working in tech before 2019. What was your specialty that allowed you to quickly shift into this particular niche?
I love the entrepreneurial questions. So I was what's called a solution architect, and effectively it's sort of not a software developer, but it's right next to a developer. I taught myself to code. And what I did there is I helped other coders integrate their platforms to Amazon. So I'd say, to be honest, just sitting in those buildings, it's a wacky place. There are dogs running around. There's free food, weird vending machines that you can get all sorts of stuff. People playing ping pong at 2:00 in the afternoon. So when you sit in sort of that silo for a really long time and do a lot of adaptable things, you sort of walk out the door and say, man, if they can do it, they're no different. I can do it as well. So I've got a mechanical engineering background by degree, but I'd say more than anything, just sort of like, hey, this is probably not going to work, but I'll try it anyway. And if you can walk into it with that, with that mindset, then anything's possible, I'd say.
Next question.
Okay, George Kennedy from George E. Kennedy Jr. from Washington, D.C. Donald, what's your setup, camera and lens?
I use an 85 millimeter with a Sony A7 III. I just like the bokeh. I don't typically go auto, but I am right now. I'm coming from outside in Greenville, South Carolina. So if you see me, flipping my hands, it's because flies are like literally whizzing around. But the part that I like is the camera does a lot of the work for me. And then on microphone, I'm using a really cheap sort of Audio Technica XLR mic. But what I do like is this PAL adapter. It'll adapt from the XLR and then run it into my computer. This Audio Technica one is just really entry level. They make good stuff, but this is sort of the entry level one that we've used for a lot of rentals. And that's the video and the audio setup.
Next question.
From JJ McKenna in San Rafael, how frequently have you been held accountable for firmware upgrades and interoperability issues with the various streaming services in use?
Good question. Not a ton I'd say they all work pretty well. The biggest one that's ever come up where we didn't get enough time, and I should have pounded the table for a pre-production meeting, but I'm sure you all have had those where customers will push back on the amount of setup time. They were using a web-based platform. They didn't have a Chrome plugin, and literally the system wouldn't even allow them to toggle between the laptop camera and the camera that we were pulling in. So that was sort of a big lesson for us is if you're willing to invest in the equipment, we're going to need you to also invest in at least 30 minutes of pre-production time. And if you're not willing to do that, we'll just walk away from the business, but not necessarily being held accountable for a lot of the firmware stuff. We haven't run into a ton, especially after that learning.
Next question.
From Aaron Husledge in Durham, North Carolina. What are your rental terms, shipping and handling fees? And are the kits bespoke or are they preset?
Mostly preset. Everything's included. So the website, haven't mentioned yet, tryboxedup.com. That's TRY, boxedup.com. All the pricing is embedded. So you go online, you select your rental dates. The first date is the day you like it delivered. The last date is the date you'd like to drop it back or have UPS pick it up. And that price auto populates. So it'll automatically say you just need it for a day. You need it for a week. Obviously, we won't charge you on the per day. We'll give you a price break like a lot of other rental houses and platforms will do there. But it's all included in the price. So you don't have to overthink. We'll just embed insurance and round trip shipping all within the price that surfaces online.
That's great. Next question.
From Lou Perez in Queen Creek, Arizona. How do you handle items that are returned incomplete or damaged?
Great question. If it's a B2B client, we'll talk with so for example, a lot of big sort of B2B clients that have 20 plus speakers, if we get missing items or some things don't come back, if it's a small item and it's a dongle, those are pretty replaceable. We try not to nickel and dime folks on those small items. But let's say a lens comes back damaged, we'll just have to enter into a discussion. It's obviously included, but we may say, hey, we shipped out 25 kits. This one's severely damaged or it never got returned. Hey, can you meet us in the middle somewhere? But again, we don't, I'd say for most of the channels, folks are pretty respectable of equipment. Now they may just throw it all back in the box. That happens a ton. But we typically don't see a lot of items walk, or at least we haven't. But I'll knock on some wood because leave it to me. I think as things scale and as we get to more customers, I'm sure that'll happen a lot more often.
Next question.
From Josh Kaufman in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Has the pandemic shortages caused you to make any substitutions in your kits?
Logitech had some challenges. Alex and I were talking about this early days. It was sort of the wild, wild west. I mean, anything that said web or virtual in the description was just sold out everywhere. So it took us a bit to just say, hey, this is an awesome solution, but we're just going to wait because we can't support the scale. Since then, we haven't had a ton of those issues. But summer 2020, from both the supply perspective and the supply chain on both sides, it was pretty rough there for about 2 to 3 months.
We have a man in South Africa. Turns out South Africa has all the stuff all the time. We had 20 Brios shipped in packages of 5 to different people to make sure that they just passed through customs. So there's like this fleet of Brios were sent to us. Next question.
From Josh Kaufman in Pittsburgh. Are your customers more price sensitive or complexity averse? Will they accept your recommendations to improve their appearance provided there is a minimum setup, or do you find that the price is a greater barrier to your recommendations?
Great question. Complexity averse. I'd say bar none, that's number one. Hey, I don't care if, I look like the president on the screen. If it's complex, I don't want to touch it. So I'd say complexity and eliminating complexity has been our number one focus, which is why we like to standardize a lot, even if it's not the best. And then 2, I'd say price starts to come into play later. But if to sort of the earlier point that Aaron had on, do customers care? If you care about the quality, typically you have some flexibility within your price range. know. So I think that sort of has made us a bit more approachable. But I'd say eliminating complexities, number one, cost would be a late number two.
Next question.
Okay, from Alton Christensen in Brooklyn. I have 3 complete kits. I need help managing logistics, shipping, return, and prep for next use. We would want to organize some rentals open to others renting as well. We could offer workflow support through, though, could you team?
Could they? So I think he has some that he wants to
team with.
Yeah.
Yes. Easy answer. Yes. That's our model. So we just treat someone like that and like you, Alton, like a third party. You'd ship your products to us prepackaged. We ship them out in our boxed up box, but it effectively get entered into our logistics infrastructure. You'd have a dashboard that would show you your inventory, and then you'd use the platform, or your customers could use the platform to generate movements or ship rentals out. So yeah, we can list it on the platform, or we could not. You'd have that flexibility. But yes, we do that today. That was sort of the NPR example that I was talking about. Yep, we do that.
Next question.
From Rupert McCrae in Dallas, Texas. Can you also provide swag shipping along with the kits?
We can. I mean, I think, and Rupert, you and I should chat. I know you've asked a few questions. Because we're shipping things to homes, we say at that point, it gets pretty easy for us to add in additional items, customize boxes, t-shirts, swag, definitely. So it's 100% possible. I just say at that point, just be mindful of the lead times. Because we're getting shipping things to people's homes, it's definitely easy for us to do it for the items we have in inventory. If you add swag, it's not a huge complexity. I just say be mindful of the lead time. So we need probably 3 to 5 days from swag delivery to being inserted into a package that we can have out the door.
And by the way, for those listening, key opportunity. Someone's opening up the box. If you're doing an event, having, sending them a t-shirt, sending them a hat, sending them, we put cookies in, but we put them at the bottom so that after you finish everything, there's like some cookies at the end. And so, which are very well received.
They get crushed?
No, they're really they're because our kits are a little bigger, and so they're in foam and they're in there, so and we spend some good money on those cookies. And then the problem is if you leave them out at the office, everyone will eat them. So you have to get them right before we send them out. So anyway, they're good, but it helps a lot. And there's a lot of things that we've sent out that I'm pretty sure that clients still have on their desk. Like that's the kind of stuff that you're sending it out, they're opening it up, and they're like, oh, that's really cool, and it's really adds a lot to it. Next question.
From Graham Cardwell in Belfast, Northern Ireland. Are you aware of overseas companies doing the same sort of boxed up concept that you might partner with in the same way you do in the United States?
Some I have seen a couple, but not any that sort of go to the extent that we will, and not any that focus, at least in AV. There are a lot of local suppliers, but none that sort of meet the same level of expertise that we'd like to do. So from my perspective, I'd much rather sort of perfect our model and scale up within the United States and then just sort of replicate it again. I'm open to a partnership. I just haven't found anyone that I'm like, hey, they get it. They do what we do and do it well. So we'll enter into a partnership agreement.
Next question.
From Rupert McCrae in Dallas. How are orders fulfilled if specialized equipment is delayed in return from the previous rental? Do you build in a safety buffer period?
We do. So we try to build in enough buffer or hold enough inventory. And then it just becomes sort of an inventory planning game. So as an example, on our site, anything that's listed there, we can pretty much fulfill within the time period. But if you were to try to order something today, you can't actually select tomorrow as a delivery date. We can fulfill tomorrow, but we put in a buffer to say, hey, we've got 10 kits coming back. We've got 15 due out next week. All right, we're going to run into an inventory cap because we've got another order for 30. And then we'll start the process of sort of queuing up third party. So at that point, it becomes sort of a fancy logistics game. But to answer the question shortly, yeah, there's a balance between what we have in inventory, what we need to purchase, or what we need to walk out the door to ask someone else to ship on our behalf.
Next question.
From Stuart Fairweather here on the panel and from Melbourne, Australia. Can you share your biggest horror story of gear that was returned in poor condition?
I'll tell you that not the biggest horror story that was returned. The horror stories are the ones that aren't returned. So there was one where in our early days, we had this customer, they knew what they were doing, which is what I think upset me the most. But they put together this really extravagant kit. I thought it was cool. I was like, hey, okay, I recognize that. Good job. You did well there. And they needed it in rush. And then they followed up an email. They were really thoughtful about how they actually sort of entered us into this sort of fraught relationship. And we overnighted it, and then it got there and crickets, and never heard anything from them again. And we were out at least $5,500 bucks. And sort of those things that kind of wake you up to say, all right, everyone's not sort of kind at heart. Items that come back actually come back in decent shape, even if a lot of people like, hey, I don't really remember how this thing fit, just jam it all in. The boxes are sturdy enough that things come back okay. But it's things that walk out the door and your CS staff says like, hey, are you sure you want to ship this? Those are the things that used to keep me up at night.
Next question.
Leo Mendel in Pinner, UK. Do you have a preferred partner to work with in the United Kingdom?
Haven't found a really good partner in the UK. Anything we've shipped to the UK, we've done one way, and we're not looking for it back. So not yet. If you got one, I'd be happy to listen and take recommendations.
Next question.
From Aaron Husledge in Durham, North Carolina. Are you actively recruiting resellers and rental companies into your platform?
Yes, we are. If you know one, if you know some, if you are one, we'd love to have you. We definitely have more demand than we have supply. And there's typically a lead time to get new suppliers and distributors on the platform. So yes, we actively are. We do marketing, we do emails, we do calls. But the more we can, the better. That always helps.
Next question.
From Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas. What setup would you recommend for a home-based contributor to appear on broadcast television, news, for example?
Honestly, I'll be honest. I really love what we have. I do like the Black Magic, but I think the broadcast television look. I mean, we're in talks with a couple of broadcast TV companies, and we're gonna pitch them this kit. I think it's simple. The other thing that I'll say, sort of as a part of our pitch, what I'll typically do is I'll turn off my camera and then I'll toggle it back and forth. That's the one thing that I'd offer is a really good sort of party trick that has helped me sort of convert deals. I'd sort of start off like this. I'd flip to my setup and they see me like this and they say, whoa. And then I'll flip back and say, hey, for the small price of X, you can also look like this. And that'll typically close the deal. So that's probably what I'd recommend.
That's great. Next question.
All right, from Aaron Husledge in Durham, North Carolina. How are you funded? What have funding challenges been?
That's a separate, complete video and podcast. Some self-funding, some retirement funding. I will be ashamed to admit. We have started taking some external funding as well. Was recently entered into sort of Google for a startup program. Some pitch competitions, some friend and family rounds. So we've raised about over $150,000. And then we're in the middle of raising sort of a full-on seed round, which will likely be over $1 million. So it's a challenge. It's hard. I don't recommend it for anyone, but we're definitely doing it.
Well, good luck.
Thank you.
Next question.
And Aaron has a follow-up question there. What's my cut if you rent or sell my stuff?
Great question. 15%. So it's a flat referral fee, no matter the amount. Happy to talk. And if there's like a massive like bulk fee or distribution or $10,000 plus of products, happy to sort of do a customized rate, but by default 15%, and that matches up with a lot of the other sort of companies you compare us to, like ShareGrid or KitSplit as an example.
And what you're saying is that you're taking 15%.
Exactly.
Yep.
So that's a referral fee on top, but we're generous, right? If we're if it's like a next day, or if it's going from California to Miami, what we'll do, we'll split a lot of the shipment cost with individual owners, and we won't pass all those costs on to them to try to make it as reasonable as possible. So we'll help out a ton there for those types of items, but we will keep that referral fee flat.
Sorry, I'm thinking about the. Go ahead, Chris.
I was just wondering, Don, I'm looking at the website and it's amazing selection of stuff. Do you ever just walk around your house and go, I bet I could rent that?
Chris,
Maybe I should put that on the website.
That's how I started. So that if anyone's on there and you see a Sonos speaker, these Sonos from my living room, the joke with my wife was I just had so much stuff. I had like 2 3D printers. I had 2 drones. I had cameras, and I didn't use any of it. And I'm like, man, this is stupid. I should probably do something with it. And I literally just started, listing stuff from our site. I've listed tools too. People don't like renting tools for some reason.
I see that. Yeah, it's interesting.
Not a lot of tool rental. So you'll see a drill and a couple drill bits, but not a lot of stuff. Because
drill bits.
Well, if you think about it, nobody wants to rent a tool because everybody is just looking for an excuse to buy a tool.
I know that's the mentality. We're not buying the tool to get something done. We're doing something to get the tool.
Yes, exactly.
See, that's the mentality.
I found that out the hard way. That did not work. So those things don't run into.
That's great. Next question.
From Roscoe Jones here on the panel. How was this office hours experience? Have you ever been grilled with this many questions back to back? By the way, you are a great spokesman.
I appreciate it. This feels like these are how investor pitches go for anyone who's curious. Literally, it's 30 minutes to an hour of just questions being peppered. So I'm used to it. We've been pitching for the last, I'd say, 4 months. It happens a ton. I love it. I think the more questions, the better. So I absolutely love the intrigue. And if there's something that I don't know, I'm happy to say I don't know. But a lot of these, we've been doing it for over a year now, at least in the sort of production and virtual and AV space that we've heard a lot of them.
Next question.
From Ray Franklin in Mount Dora. As a presentation coach, I do what I can to ensure good eye contact. Do you provide a tripod for your Brio cameras?
Yes. No, not for the Brios. Good point on eye contact. That's probably the other thing that catches people up a ton is getting used to, you've been accustomed after you've been in the house for 16 months looking down at your computer screen, getting people to bring their eye level up to start talking to the camera, if it's this camera or if it's a Brio, can be tough. So we don't ship it with the Brio. It can typically be slotted in right where their laptop camera can be. But if, someone has a docking station and they're using a monitor off to the side, we have some that we recommend. We get ours from Amazon if we ever need them. Amazon has a pretty good selection of Brio mounts, but we don't stock them or use them a ton.
Next question.
From Michael Fraley in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, how do you handle failures of shipping and or hardware needed on a deadline?
It happens from time to time. Unfortunately, and apologize for anyone who uses or works for them, we don't use USPS anymore. We just simply couldn't depend on it. We use UPS or FedEx almost bar none. If we miss a shipment, it pretty much almost never happens, but there can be delays. So things that happen a ton that we've learned is we don't collect any information via email at all, shipping address information. We try to push that on the client or on the talent to enter in, because typically people won't make mistakes if they're entering in their own information. But we've had situations where we were shipping something to someone, producers collected the info, they populated, they entered in the wrong address, and we were sort of forced to overnight once we got the flag that UPS needed to redirect the shipment. That happens probably more than just UPS missing it. There was that time period in 2020 where even UPS was having some struggles meeting deadlines. But since about October of last year, they've been pretty consistent with meeting deadlines and promised times that they surfaced online.
What is the process for someone to sign up for it? So I think that was one of the things that I thought was kind of cool, that you send out a link, right? For that, or they can send out a link, and it's basically like a coupon code, right?
For what?
Like, so if NPR wants to have everybody put in their stuff to get, either a producer or an individual to do that, what is the process to do that?
Yeah, so I'll actually haven't shared my screen, but I will do that now.
Yeah, Sky, can you make Donald a co-host? Yeah.
So one of the things that we do is we'll still disable. All right, there we go. So one of the things that we do for a lot of clients to make that process easy is we'll just create a customized landing page. Typically on process, it takes about 24 hours from ask to delivery. We do this for free. It's included, but we effectively brand the landing page and curate the specific product. So folks aren't landing on the web page and sort of shopping around. We say, no, actually, this is what we need all of the speakers to have, or one of these two products, choose your own. And then we sort of try to, include some screenshots to make individuals feel comfortable. But this is an example of a landing page that will sort of curate and queue up pretty quickly. But 24 hours lead time, it is free, it is included. And then what we'll also do is we'll give them a coupon code. So people or speakers aren't using their credit cards to check out. We'll process a $0 transaction, and then we'll just invoice the planners or the organizers on the back end to say, hey, you rented or you utilized 20 kits over the course of the month. Here's your invoice for the 20 kits that we shipped out.
That's great. Next question.
From Sky Gleason in Seattle and cutting the show today. As a production company of content, do you also have ATEM switchers in your rentals?
I'm going to defer to this audience for ATEM switchers. I will be honest, I do not know what an ATEM switcher is, but I'm interested in learning.
Yeah, it's a lot of us. How many people here are on ATEM switchers? Just out of curiosity.
Office hours.
Yeah. So
need to join.
Blackmagic makes a small switcher that will take Kenn's holding one up. That's a 4-channel switcher. It also acts as, it's $300, and it acts as the interface. So it'll just look like a webcam to to Zoom or whatever. But you can add graphics, and you can add multiple cameras, and you can cut between. A lot of us use it. Everything down to like I built a telestrator out of it. So it's a pretty useful little piece of glue. Yeah. Especially if you're already going down the path of an HDMI out of a camera, this is a $300 thing that is what you would use to get it into the computer, but then it does all these other things. Also, what we do is we either port forward or use a VPN so that we can now go in. When we have a Blackmagic camera, we can shade the camera, we can start record, we can end record, we can start and stop the records we have a Mix Pre 3 that we use for that. And so we can control a lot of things on their end, including switching like a slide on and off. So if we want to just give them privacy, you can load a slide up. In fact, you can load a slide up yourself. You can just save a slide of yourself like this and come back later. But it's a really it's game changer. There literally went from being switchers used to be something that a lot of us didn't have much impact. They're now advertising these like in National Geographic magazine and Time magazine. So they're becoming kind of a mainstream piece of hardware. But yeah, almost all of us have in this group. Almost all of us end up with a switcher.
I hope you're getting some kickback for that sales pitch. I'm sold.
From a production company point of view, here in Seattle, I was looking forward to having coffee with you, but it sounds like it'd be a bit of a commute. You moved east, I see. But next time you're in Seattle, coffee's on me.
And one of the most useful things is when we go in and out of them, that's my most used button. I just have a little fade to black. So and so anyway, that's it.
That's awesome.
Next question.
From Kenn Jordan in Surrey, UK. What logistics software do you use?
Homegrown. We've created that ourselves. Because if you get to a point where it's got to integrate with your systems and how you fulfill. There's some WMS warehouse management systems you can pull off the street. But at that investment level, it doesn't make sense, especially for a small startup. So we use our own in-house collaborative tool that enables us to manage inventory in a couple of locations. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for everyone, especially if that's, coding or dev work isn't your wheelhouse, but it works for us.
Next question.
From Rupert McRae in Dallas. Are you seeing customers rent equipment for in-office use, or is it just more and more people working remotely?
Almost always remotely. We've seen some hybrid. We get quite a fair amount of hybrid, and we started to do some on-premise. I know in-person's coming back a lot, despite the uptick. We'll stay away from the in-person. It's in our capabilities. We do a lot of post-editing work, but we'll see requests for people doing hybrid, and they want their hybrid or their remote talent to still look good. So we'll see, remote talent in an office or remote talent with someone from an office, but we haven't done a ton of like everyone's in the office at the same time. Not a lot of it.
One of the things that I thought was interesting, this is long before COVID, we had just executives that just didn't want to spend the time to fly to Singapore or to Morocco or to somewhere else. And so building that, we would just build the point-to-point connections to just stick them there. And that became a pretty regular business.
Company all hands is something that comes up a lot. They'll use a kit for company all hands.
Yeah. Next question.
From Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas. Could local pickup be available when equipment is located nearby, like in major metro areas, like Turo car rental?
Yeah, that's the vision. I mentioned the lawnmower. I do think that is where the world will go. Based on my background, it was easy for me to fix the sort of the delivery problem first. That's near and dear. Once you flip the local, it's more convenient, but then you also deal with a completely different set of problems. How do you trust people? Do you set up a mutual meeting location? What if something happens? I'm sure a lot of things that Turo and Airbnb have figured out. We've just parked those problems to solve them in like 2022. We'll get there eventually. But right now we're solving delivery. But yeah, the pickup will be the next one. When you do that, and then you completely sort of blow the doors off the thing.
Well, and one of the things that we've taken advantage of is the fact that we have the office hours network is, thousands of people and all over the world. And there are people here who have delivered stuff for, like we have, we ship it to them and then have them deliver it to somebody for us, because and having that network of some level of trust has made a huge difference.
I wish I would have known. I've done self-delivery myself. Like, hey, I'm not going to make it in time. I'll throw on a yellow vest and a boxed up hat and get in my car. I've done a few midnight deliveries.
That's great. Next question.
From A. Mitchells in Washington, can you provide a reference document to our private Discord server of links to your favorite recommended products, either in your kits or that you suggest to clients to complement your kits?
Definitely. I'll take that down as a note. We keep a pretty fair amount of products that we stock regularly. So what I'll do, I'll just export. We use Amazon Business for a lot of our purchases. That is one thing that I'll say. That sign up for Amazon Business. You'll get discounts for a lot of sort of regular products, but sellers will discount it if they know it's going to a business. So that helps a ton. But I'll just do an export list of all the things that we purchase commonly, and then some of the things that we purchase from some in-house or like Sweetwater and things like that. But happy to.
Next question.
From Josh Kaufman in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Do you have the process of documenting? Sorry, it's moving around. Do you have the process of documenting the condition of your equipment as it leaves your warehouses, photo description, etc., to aid in confrontations that sound like, well, that's how it was when it arrived?
Great question. We hand inspect everything. So it's a really, really good question, though. So common in rental is a sort of a grading mechanism where you receive the equipment back and then you grade it, A through E. We pretty much only stock like A to B items. So we haven't had to have a sophisticated grading system where we say, hey, this thing's out of stock. And at that point, we just sort of decommission it. So I'd say we probably decommission items more so. But a lot of the large rental houses, they'll have a grading system. It falls below a certain grade, they'll liquidate it on a separate warehouse sales site. But a lot of popular rental houses and online platforms will do that.
Next question.
From Keenan Campbell in Princeton, Illinois. Sounds like a partnership between Office Hours members and Boxed Up, since we are global with local reach.
I think it could be.
I think it could be as well. I mean, I am not. I mean, I haven't even been using an ATAM switcher, so you guys see how little I know about that world. But you know, for me and for us, there are limitations, and we're just never going to be that great at planning events and the things that are needed to master that part. So it's just much easier for us to focus on logistics. Let's focus on customer experience. Let's focus on getting things to people on time. And yeah, so we're always happy to partner or sort of serve as a back of house. If you want to white label us to deliver your stuff, we're happy to do that.
Well, and I think that the big thing about this panel and the group in general is that everybody has their own little vertical that they don't know about. And so, you know, the panel, you know, the wisdom of the panel is much bigger than the wisdom of any one of us. You know, there's all these, if you watch the first hour, you saw this kind of, there's different people answering those questions because of all that. It's the heterogeneous mix that makes this work, which we haven't really seen anywhere else. So, I mean, to have this many technical people to kind of trade notes every day. Go ahead, Aaron.
One other thing I'd mention is that we're really good at understanding what's changing and how fast it's changing or how slow it's changing.
Because we talk about it every day.
Yeah, exactly.
7 days a week.
There'll be some change here in an hour and a half, right, that we all are going to watch. And I think, yeah, that's going to be key to at least in this vertical to be for you guys.
Go ahead, Sky, real quick.
2 questions. Yes, to Alex's point, community is king, not content, but we do create content. So community is king is a philosophy. And 2, how do we connect with you directly? I reached out to you on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Donald at tryboxedup.com. Donald at tryboxedup. Phone number as well, 301-254-4743. I give that out freely because it's also listed on our website as well.
I was about to say, you know, we're streaming to YouTube.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's on the site, so that comes to me as well. But I try to be as accessible as possible. But Donald at tryboxedup.
That's great. Donald, thank you so much for your time. Really great to have you. Yeah, absolutely. It was a fantastic hour. To all of our producers who are watching, thanks so much for the great questions. It was really, really great. You just drove that conversation. First hour, second hour, out of the park. Thanks to our panelists for all the great discussion, as always. Yet another successful 480 something or other, or 490. I think that we're at 90. I think next Friday is the 500th. I think
90,
is that right?
91, I think, is today.
But I
Friday.
think Friday. Okay. A week from Friday is our 500th show. So stay tuned for that. I am going to put, because we had so much trouble with some of the emails and everything else, in Mukana, I'm putting the after hours registration link just so that you can, if you want to come into after hours. I know that it's a little hard to get into if you weren't in Discord and you weren't in somewhere else. I'm not going to do that every day, but I'm just going to do it today so that you can jump in if you want. And we're going to be doing but at 10 o'clock, we're going to do kind of Mystery Science Theater. I moved some other meetings to make room. So at 10 o'clock, we're going to do a Mystery Science Theater of the Black Magic live stream. So this will, and because they said that this is a broadcast announcement, we're expecting great things. So we'll be excited about that. So we're going to jump into the after hours. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks.